My Aunt Hattie told me that when I was a baby 6 months old, she hummed to me, and I hummed right back at her.
You must have been a beautiful baby.
Who, me?
You must have been a wonderful child.
Ah, come on.
When you were only starting to go to kindergarten, I bet you drove the little girls wild.
First and foremost, Johnny Mercer was a Southerner from the deep South, Savannah, Georgia. The Mercers were one of Savannah's principal families. They were known for their philanthropy and their impressive American lineage.
The first ancestor in this country was General Hugh Mercer, who was George Washington's Surgeon General. He is in that picture crossing the Delaware with Washington. Unfortunately, he was killed early in the war at the Battle of Princeton under what was known as the Princeton Oak. But there is a big monument to him. Johnny's father was a chairman of Savannah Bank and a president of Bethesda Boys Home, which is one of the first orphanages here in the United States, and it's still going. And his father was president of the Georgia Bar Association. I guess there was a legacy and a big expectation for him to fulfill, and he did it.
Being in a family that was fairly well-to-do as he was growing up, I think they had the first gramophone in the area.
He would gather as many records as he could and play them as a child.
He talked to me once endlessly about W.S. Gilbert, how much he admired him, and could quote at length Gilbert's lyrics.
My grandfather had a realty business, and there was property in Florida. And this thing just went bust. And Johnny had to come home.
Mercer had been due to follow in the family tradition and enroll at Princeton, one of America's most... That dream was over. In the first rumblings of the crash to come, land prices began to fall in 1927. The effect on the Mercer family was catastrophic. Rather than declare bankruptcy, Mercer's father chose to liquidate his company to protect his shareholders. Together with his personal savings, he used nearly all of his remaining assets to try and return their investments.
He had $2,000 left, and he gave Johnny $1,000. He said, "I'm going to pay all this back." Pop said, "You're going to have to make a lot of money, son, to pay this back." And he said, "I'm going to do it."
Mine's a hopeless case, but there's one saving grace. Anyone would feel as I do, out of breath and scared to death of you. Love was first divine, then explored and defined. Still the old sensation is new. Out of breath and scared to death of you.
That was my first published song, and that was called Out of Breath and Scared to Death of You. And in that show is where I met Ginger, my wife. She was a dancer in the show, and I had a song in it.
Johnny really wanted to be an actor. He had done some theater work and got very good notices, and he thought that was going to be his career. Actually, I don't think he realized that music was always more important than anything else.
Dear, I thought I'd drop a line.
Ginger Meehan was born Elizabeth Melcher in Brooklyn in 1909. Her parents changed their name. They were poor Jewish immigrants from Russia. Theirs was a world away from the debutantes that Mercer had dated back home in Savannah.
He was madly in love with her. They were married in New York City, and then he sent a telegram to his mother and father that they were married. I think my grandmother was not appreciative of that particular thing.
Yes, I love you.
Mercer had arrived in New York 2 years before his marriage by an extraordinary route. He'd stowed away on a steamer that traveled America's eastern seaboard. The city that greeted him was humming to the sound of jazz and the fabulous Broadway musicals of his heroes, George Gershwin, Cole Porter, and Irving Berlin. He got a day job at a brokerage house, took bit parts acting, and began to work his way into the publishing and songwriting business.
I entered a singing talent competition sponsored by the band leader Paul Whiteman, and I won. The prize included a year's engagement with the band.
Paul Whiteman styled himself the king of jazz. Mercer became one of Whiteman's rhythm boys, following in the footsteps of Bing Crosby, who, coincidentally, had been a boyfriend of Ginger's. Crosby had already moved on to Hollywood.
I wanna see what makes me.
Up until that time, they had had strictly lyrical tenors, but Crosby was a casual singer. He sang words, and he breathed a lot in between phrases. Now, everybody copied him. I could illustrate, for instance, Paul Robeson would sing, "Old Man River."
That old man River, he must know something, but don't say nothing. He just keeps rolling. He keeps on rolling along.
Bing would sing it. Old Man River, that old man River, he don't say nothing, but he must know something.
'Cause it just keeps rolling, keeps on rolling along.
That was brand new in those days, to have a fella sing a song like that with a jazz band.
Singing with Whiteman gave Mercer an entree into the very heart of the New York music scene. George and Ira Gershwin and most of the other aristocrats of songwriting in the 30s, Irving Berlin, Rodgers and Hart, were actually from New York. There were two notable exceptions, Cole Porter and Hoagie Carmichael, who were both born in Indiana.
You all set, Slim?
Sure.
Maybe it happens this way. Maybe we really belong together, but after all, how little we know.
It's no coincidence that Mercer's first successful collaboration was with a fellow non-metropolitan.
He walked in one day, and I was sitting in the chair. The door was open, summertime, and he walked in, knocked. I said, "Come in." I said, "What's on your mind?" He said, "Well, I thought we might try to write a song." Well, got any idea? Oh, yes, I thought I'd like to write a song called Lazy Bones. What do you think of that title? I said, "Well, for this kind of a summer we're having here in New York, and what with the Depression and nobody working," I said, "it sounds mighty logical."
Lazy bones, sitting in the sun. How you expect to get your day's work done?
Never get your day's work done. Sleeping in the noonday sun.
Lazy bones, sleeping in the shade. How you expect to get your cornmeal made?
The last line of Lazy Bones knocked me out because I didn't think of it. Hoagie thought of it. I had Lazy Bones. How you going to make a dime that way? You're never going to make a dime that way. I probably said sleeping away, sleeping all the day away, or something like that. And then he said, if he never heard a word I say, I thought, gee, that's sensational.
Long as you got a little gravy on your rice, you figure everything gonna wind up real nice. As long as you got a little watermelon hanging on the vine, you figure everything gonna turn out real fine. Lazy bones sleeping in the sun, how you expect to get your day's work done? Never get your day's work done. Sleeping in the noonday sun. You lazy sucker, you. Lazy bones sleeping in the sheet. How you expect to get you a cornbread made? Never get you a cornbread made. Sleeping in the evening shade. When taters need spraying, bet you keep a praying the bugs fall off of the vine. When you go fishing, bet you keep wishing